Well, hi everybody, my name is Guillemette Crépeau. I work in the French team of Professor Autier and Gherardi. And first of all, I would like to thank the organization and especially the CMSRI for giving me and giving us the opportunity to speak today. And well, I would like to thank them for the financial support for my PhD student too. And today I'm gonna talk about the experimental evaluation of the toxicokinetics of aluminum-based adjuvants, and especially on one topic, this is what is wrong in the reference study. Because you all know that the aluminum adjuvants are officially considered as safe, but this is in the absence of any official experimental investigation. And the official safety is based on 3 scientific points. The first one is that there is an high solubilization in interstitial fluid, but this is contradictory with in vitro data. The second point is a rapid elimination from the body through urine. And the third point is that the aluminum exposure through vaccination is considered as lower than the safety levels. And I'm going to talk about that point, and especially with the 3 reference studies that we know. The first one is Flarin et al. 1997, the second one is Kiss et al. 2002, and the third one is Mitkus et al. 2001. So I'm going to explain very briefly the topic of each of these studies, and then I'm going to explain you what we think about some things on these studies. Well, the first one is an experimental study in which the team injected isotopic aluminum adjuvants in rabbits. The things you have to remember in that in the beginning of this slide is the number of rabbits. In this paper, we can have results on 2 rabbits per adjuvant, and that's all. And finally, the team measured the IL content 28 days later in some samples in blood, in urine, and then in different distant organs such as kidney or spleen or brain. What they conclude is that the dissolution, absorption, distribution, and elimination of aluminum adjuvants has been demonstrated, and that finally they conclude about an excretion of 6% for the aluminum oxidroxide and 22% for the aluminum phosphate in 28 days. What we think about this study is that they did not comment the initial blood peak that we can observe in the results, and also they did not comment the undulation, and especially the peaks that you can see at 100 and 400 hours. And these different peaks may be a sign of phenomena of capture and release, and this is a very interesting thing to discuss. They discussed all their results considering an early IL solubilization, but we know from in vitro data that did not occur in a physiological condition. And finally, they did not talk about any aluminum capture by immune cells, and this is a very, very important point to understand the fate and the translocation and then the toxicity of aluminum cells. Considering the urinary excretion, among other points, one of them is that we can't see any slope for one of the rabbits for aluminum hydroxide, and this means that the urinary excretion is finally very low for that adjuvant in that animals. So urinary excretion is not a strong way of elimination. And they did observe a distant translocation, and this is all except something reassuring, because they did observe the aluminum injecting in muscle in brain 28 days later. Also, other points that we can analyze is that they call their study a preliminary study, but we don't have any definitive study on that point. They have 2 animals per group. The time of the study is a short time study, and in the topic of aluminum biopersistence and translocation and toxicity, I'm sorry. we need to study longer time, several months or several years, even if we can in animal models. They did not collect the injected muscle. They did not collect the regional lymph nodes, they preferred the intestinal lymph nodes. They lost some samples, and it's something very surprising, but this is written just like this in the paper. Samples were lost during the procedure. And we think that the conclusion is misleading because an excretion of 6% of aluminum hydroxide and 22% of aluminum phosphate in 28 days really means that there is a retention of 94% or 78% for each of both adjuvants. Just to remember, this is the only pharmacokinetic study of aluminum adjuvants in an animal model. And this is used for the modeling of the pharmacokinetics of adjuvants, and we will see later in the presentation. The second, thank you. Well, the second study is Kiss et al. 2002 in the same journal. And this is a very different study because it's a comparison of a theoretical calculation of AL body burden and an AL minimal risk level. So I'm going to explain how they get the both value and how what result did they get. The theoretical calculation was calculated for babies, and it considered the intake and excretion of aluminium according to body weight of babies. And the intake considered the aluminium from food and from vaccination. The excretion of aluminium was calculated assuming that aluminium injected is totally absorbed, and the toxicokinetic profile is based on a previous study by Priest et al. In 1995, in which one adult man received soluble isotopic aluminium intravenously. The minimal risk level was in this study 2 milligrams per kilo per day, and an MRL is defined by the ATSDR, and this value is fixed from animal experiments extrapolated to humans using correction factors. And the animal experiments give no AL value, and the study used to have a no AL value in that paper is the one by Golub et al. 1989, in which adult mice were exposed to aluminium lactate through food. Here you can see the results by Kiss et al. 2002, and they comment these curves, saying that the curve for aluminum from vaccine is below the MRL, and that you can also observe spikes on the injection day, but followed by a rapid elimination. And they note that an overlap exists between the MRL and the vaccine curve. Okay, so this is a second reassuring study, and what we think about that is that the first hypothesis is still wrong. They did not make a distinction between the two different aluminum adjuvants, and we know that they can have very a strong difference in after injection. They used inappropriate toxicokinetic model and inappropriate MRL, and they did not consider the maturity of renal function, blood-brain barrier, or immune system. They used a low pediatric vaccine schedule based on 7 aluminum injections. Just to remember, in 2016, 17 aluminum injections were recommended for babies. It's not very different in terms of total amount of aluminium, but this is a strong difference in terms of the number of times you activate the immune system. They used a high MRL, a too high MRL, And this study needs an update for the weight curve of American children and for the mathematical model of retention of aluminium intravenously injected. And on that 4 points, Mitkus et al. Updated the study by Kiss et al. So the third reference study is the one by Mitkus. This is again a comparison of a theoretical calculation of AL body burden and an AL minimal risk level. I'm going to explain you what is different from the previous study by Kiss. The difference for the calculation of theoretical body burden is that they consider more vaccines, and the expression was updated with the study by Flarin et al., which is the first one that I talk about, and they updated the toxicokinetic profile with Priest 2004. This time they considered the immature renal function of infants. And if we take a look of the MRL of 1 milligram per kilo per day, it's not 2 now, it's 1 milligram per kilo per day, is still defined by the ATSDR, and is fixed from the animal study by Golub et al. 2001, in which young mice were exposed to aluminum lactate through contaminated food. Here are the curves that the author obtained. And you can see a strong margin of security between the exposure to aluminium from vaccine and the MRL that they used. And they said that the episodic exposure to vaccine that contain aluminium continue to be extremely low risk to infants because of this strong margin of security, and that AL from vaccine is unlikely to have a significant influence of AL body burden. So this ensures a good safety for aluminium adjuvant for babies. Well, our opinion on that conclusion, on that result and that conclusion is that they did not consider, again, the maturity of blood-brain barrier and immune system that can modify the conclusion. They used an inappropriate toxicokinetic model and MRL, and considering the MRL, it was, again, too high, and because it was based on a too high NOAL. For an example, here are the results that you have just seen. If we used another more recent study by Alaoudi 2016, they did observe effect for an oral dose of 3.4 milligram per aluminium per kilo per day. If we want to try to calculate a new MRL based on this dose, which we can call a low AL dose, we will see the curve on the side, and you can see that the aluminium phosphate, the aluminium AL body burden is now higher than this new MRL. We have the same kind of result with the other adjuvants, and we can even update again that with a more recent study last year by the group of Martinez, in which they saw effects for oral dose of 1.5 milligram per kilo. So you can imagine that we can even have an MRL lower than that you can see now. In conclusion, in that 3 reference studies, we have 1 experimental study and 2 theoretical calculations, and the starting hypothesis is incorrect. The design of the study are limited and imperfect. We can notice important biases on the methodology, and the safety threshold are very high, and they are too high. And above all, one thing that is never considered is the particulate form for aluminium adjuvants. And this is a very important point to consider, because it's not the same thing between soluble aluminium and particled aluminium. And I think that the presentation by Emma Charlot just give information on that point. And in our recent study, we have observed in a murine study a non-linear dose response with selective low dose effects for aluminium hydroxide. And we made the hypothesis that the particle size of aluminium has a very important role, and this is, I personally think, one of the most important things to consider. So in that topic of aluminium adjuvant persistence, translocation, and toxicity, the dose makes the poison, the very famous sentence by Paracels, the dose makes the poison, may be overly simplistic. And even the concept of NOAL and MRL is very hard to apply to this topic. So I think we urgently need for further long-term toxicokinetic studies, and this will ensure maximum level of safety for classical and new generation adjuvants. So thank you for your attention. I don't know if I need to add that my baby is cute too and vaccinated, of course. And if you want to know more, you can read our paper on that critique of the 3 reference studies. Thank you.
The question. The paper is open for discussion.
Okay, well, I'll make a small start to get you warmed up, because we have time. The first thing is a slight defense for Richard Flarand, because Richard Flarand, who was previously known as Richard Flack, is a very old friend of the aluminium people and the aluminium Kiel meetings. And we knew him before he disappeared. And his reason for doing that study was simply to show that when an aluminium adjuvant is administered, it in some way is metabolized. And that's why they measured the urine. Now, other people, of course, have taken that study and used it in a way that it was not designed for. So I think we shouldn't be too critical of Flarand. It's the way in which the study was used.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you think. Yes, we cannot use this study to be a reference for aluminium.
Make a
Claire.
comment on, yes, sorry.
Just one quick question. Claire from the United States. And I wanted to know if there has been any official response from any health agencies to the study. Have you tried to contact health agencies to submit this study? And if so, has there been any response?
Well, I don't have from personal response from official agency. Rema, I don't know if you have. No.
Thank you.
They were informed by several ways of these results, but had no reaction until now. One point about the dissolution or solubilization of the adjuvant. Even if you project the curves of Flarand in terms of complete solubilization and elimination of the aluminium from aluminium hydroxide, it gives a time for elimination of 5.5 months, a bit less than 6 months. All experimental studies conducted in mice, in rats, in rabbits, and in monkeys show that the duration of the granuloma at site of injection lasts at least 6 months and only disappears within 1 year. So there is a strong underestimation of the residence time of aluminum hydroxide within the immune system. And in humans, we observed up to 15 years persistency of the aluminum in immune cells at site of immunization. So the biopersistency of aluminum hydroxide is huge, is very important. This is crucial. And everybody thought that it was eliminated within weeks after the injection until the early 21st century. So this is a very important issue. So the vaccine system made an extreme error in predicting the fate of the adjuvant, and they made this error because they refused to analyze it in depth. That's it.
Andrea Militaro from France. My question, I think, is more for you, because you talk about this long retention of aluminum, and my question is, could be linked to the multiple vaccination. So we have to do to make the booster vaccine every 6, and after that, and we have 11 vaccines to do, and all of them contains adjuvant. Could be linked to this, or
the more you inject,
yeah,
the more you retain. My thought now about aluminum adjuvant, it is like plastic in the rivers or in the sea. If it is biopersistent and it accumulates, and the more you put in the system, and the more you have. And that's a real problem, because the number of vaccine administration containing aluminum until the 80s was very small. And from 83 to 2013, it increased considerably because of HBV vaccine, HAV vaccine, tetanus toxoid vaccines with adjuvants, meningococcus vaccine, pneumococcus vaccine, Haemophilus B vaccine, HPV vaccine, and so on and so on. And we are facing a time when 120 more adjuvanted vaccines are in the pipelines, and they will come. And the evaluation of what so many vaccines administered worldwide to the population can provoke, the topic has not been addressed. So we are facing an important problem.
And another question. Considering the immature brain barrier system and immature immune system of the children which are vaccinated, should we not consider very well the age of vaccination?
Sure. A quick answer, and it is yes. Yes. Thank you.